A successful husband's world shatters the moment his bodyguard whispers 4 words, "Check your wife's purse," exposing an 18-month secret that destroys his perfect marriage. The city lights of Charlotte blurred softly outside the tinted windows as the SUV moved steadily down the highway. It had been a long week in Raleigh. Meetings, contracts, negotiations. John Delaney leaned back in the rear seat, loosening his tie, finally allowing his shoulders to drop. Home. That was all he wanted. The house in Valentine, the quiet driveway, the warm kitchen lights, Joyce's voice asking how the trip went. The ordinary comfort of a life that felt stable. Raymond Torres drove in silence, as he always did. Calm, focused, measured. The kind of man who did not waste movement or words. The kind of man who noticed everything. The tires hummed against the asphalt. The airport was already miles behind them. 10 more minutes and they would pull into the driveway. Ray glanced at the rearview mirror. "John," he said quietly, his voice steady. "I need to tell you something before we get home." John opened his eyes slowly. There was no alarm yet, just mild curiosity. "What's up?" Ray kept his eyes on the road. "I need you to hear me out before you react." Something in his tone shifted the air inside the vehicle. Not panic, not urgency, just gravity. John straightened slightly. "Okay." There was a brief pause, the kind that stretches longer than it should. Outside, headlights passed in silent streaks. Ray inhaled once. "Check your wife's purse." That was it. 4 words. The kind of words that do not shout. They do not accuse. They simply land, heavy and irreversible. For a moment, John did not respond. He blinked once, as if he had misheard. "What?" he asked quietly. Ray did not dramatize. He did not speculate. He did not insult Joyce or offer theories. He simply explained what he had observed over the past few months. Small changes, patterns, things that did not align. A second phone glimpsed inside a black purse in the office. Something that did not feel right. The SUV continued forward, but inside it, time slowed. John stared out the window at the passing streetlights. His jaw tightened slightly, but he did not raise his voice. "Noah, not Joyce. Not us. Was this a misunderstanding? A coincidence? Or the beginning of something he would never be able to unsee?" His heartbeat grew louder in his ears. Not anger, not yet. Something colder. Something heavier. The quiet dread of a man standing at the edge of truth. Ray said nothing more. He had delivered the message. The rest belonged to John. They turned onto the familiar street. The house came into view. Warm lights glowed from the windows. Joyce's car was in the driveway. Everything looked normal, but something had already shifted. And sometimes, the moment before you open the door is the last moment your life still feels whole. Because the truth does not shout when it arrives. It whispers and waits for you to listen. Before we go any further, you need to understand the man sitting in that car. John Delaney was not born into comfort. He was raised in a small apartment in New York, the kind where bills were discussed in whispers and every dollar had a destination before it even arrived. His father worked 2 jobs. Mornings at a warehouse, nights driving deliveries. His mother stretched groceries like a magician pulling miracles from thin air. John grew up watching that. He grew up promising himself that one day, the people he loved would never have to count coins at the kitchen table again. By 12 years old, he had already decided something. His life would be different. And it was. By 35, John had built Delaney Transport from the ground up. Not through shortcuts. Not through favors. Through long nights, risk, discipline, and an almost stubborn sense of integrity. The company grew steadily in Charlotte. Contracts expanding, employees multiplying, revenue climbing into the millions. But if you met him on the street, you would not guess any of it. He drove a truck. A nice one, yes, but practical. He wore simple suits. He showed up to church most Sundays. He called his mother every week without fail. He knew the names of his employees' children. Success had not changed him. It had simply revealed him. And then there was Joyce. He did not fall for her because she was beautiful, though she was. He fell for her ambition, her mind, the way she spoke about building something of her own. They met at a business conference, two driven people drawn to each other's vision. Their love felt balanced, equal, intentional. When he proposed in Savannah, it was quiet. No crowd, no spectacle, just a conversation about the future, about partnership. John did not believe in temporary love. When he committed, he meant it fully. If I choose you for life. The house in Valentine was not just a symbol of wealth. It was a symbol of arrival. 7 bedrooms, a pool, space to grow old together, space for laughter, maybe children, maybe grandchildren one day. From the outside, their marriage looked strong, stable, admired. And that is what makes betrayal so devastating, doesn't it? It is not just about losing a person. It is about losing the story you believed you were living. John prided himself on one thing above all: integrity. He believed loyalty was not a word, it was a daily action. He believed love required discipline. He believed marriage was not about excitement, but about commitment. He had built everything carefully: his business, his home, his reputation, his vows. Which is why the idea that something could be wrong felt almost impossible. He had done everything right. And sometimes that is exactly why the fall hurts the most. Because when you build your life on loyalty, betrayal does not just break your heart. It shakes your foundation. John first met Joyce in a crowded conference hall in Dallas. It was loud, busy, filled with polished professionals exchanging business cards and rehearsed smiles. But when she spoke on a small marketing panel that afternoon, John stopped listening to everyone else. She was confident without being arrogant, intelligent without trying to impress. She spoke about building her own consulting firm from scratch, about risk and resilience, about wanting something that belonged to her. Afterward, he introduced himself. What began as a business conversation slowly became something softer. Longer dinners, shared airport rides, late-night phone calls that had nothing to do with work. Felt natural, balanced. He admired her ambition. She admired his steadiness. 2 years later, in Savannah by the water, as the sun set quietly behind them, John asked her to marry him. No audience, no cameras, just a simple ring and a simple promise. I want to build a life with you, he said, and she said yes. Their wedding was elegant but intimate. Close friends, family, laughter that echoed through the evening air. When they danced for the first time as husband and wife, people said they looked perfectly matched. And in those early years, they were. The house in Valentine became their shared dream realized. Joyce chose the decor. John handled the logistics. They argued lightly about paint colors and laughed about it later. Friday nights meant movies in the family room. Sunday mornings meant coffee on the patio. They traveled. They hosted dinner parties. They celebrated anniversaries with handwritten notes. From the outside, it was picture perfect. And maybe for a while it truly was. There is something powerful about the early years of a marriage, that sense of unity, of standing side by side against the world. They were partners, not just in love but in vision. John would sometimes look at her across the dinner table and think, we really built this. Was it possible for something that beautiful to quietly drift without anyone noticing? Neighbors admired them. Friends envied them. They were the couple people pointed to as proof that ambition and love could coexist. But perfection is often just perspective. No one sees the small silences that begin to stretch longer. No one hears the unspoken needs that go unaddressed. From the outside, the windows glow warmly. Inside, the temperature can shift slowly without anyone naming it. Still, during those first 5 or 6 years, they were happy. Or at least, they believed they were. And sometimes, the most dangerous cracks are the ones hidden beneath polished floors. Because a marriage can look flawless from the outside while quietly unraveling within. It never begins with something dramatic. It begins with something small. Ray had worked security for John for years. He was trained to notice patterns, changes in behavior, shifts in tone, movements that did not align with routine. It was second nature to him. He noticed details most people overlooked. And lately, there were details that did not sit right. Joyce's phone was always face down now. Not occasionally, always. On the kitchen counter. On the patio table. Even beside her pillow at night. First, Ray dismissed it. Privacy was normal. Everyone deserved that. But then came the mileage. Ray handled vehicle logs as part of John's security protocol. He noticed the numbers quietly. The SUV was traveling farther than Joyce's usual routes. Meetings she had not mentioned. Errands that stretched longer than necessary. He did not say anything. Not yet. Then there was the affection. Joyce had always been warm with John. But suddenly it became exaggerated. Unexpected gifts. Long embraces when he returned from short trips. Compliments delivered with almost urgent sweetness. Felt rehearsed. Ray watched from a professional distance. He was not a suspicious man by nature. But patterns tell stories, and this one was forming piece by piece. One evening, he saw Joyce step outside to take a call. Her voice lowered. Her posture shifted. When she came back inside, her smile returned. Bright and controlled. Something is off, Ray thought quietly. But was he reading too much into ordinary changes? People grow. People evolve. Marriage shifts over time. Still, training teaches you one thing. Coincidence rarely repeats itself. The phone. The mileage. The overcompensation. The secrecy wrapped in sweetness. Ray did not want to believe it. He respected Joyce. He respected their marriage. And John trusted her completely. That was the part that unsettled him most. Because trust is beautiful, but it can also blind. Ray found himself paying closer attention, not out of curiosity, but out of duty. His loyalty was to John's safety, and safety was not always physical. Sometimes it was emotional, financial, reputational. And if there was something forming beneath the surface, it would not stay hidden forever. Storms rarely announce themselves loudly at first. They gather quietly, almost politely, until the air becomes heavy enough to break. Ray could feel the pressure building. He just did not yet know how hard it would hit. Because the smallest changes often carry the loudest warnings. It was late afternoon when Ray noticed it. John had left for a quick investor meeting. Joyce had stopped by the office earlier, saying she wanted to surprise her husband with lunch. The staff smiled. Everything looked normal. But on the leather chair near John's private desk sat a black purse Ray had never seen before. Joyce owned designer bags. Structured, elegant, recognizable. This one was different. Plain, soft leather. No visible brand. It did not match her usual taste. Ray told himself it was nothing. Still, something made him pause. He stepped closer, not touching it at first. Just observing. The zipper was slightly open, just enough to reveal a glimpse of what was inside. And then he saw it. A phone. Not John's. Not the one Joyce always carried. A second phone. His chest tightened. He should not look further. It was not his place. Privacy mattered. Marriage was sacred. But security was his responsibility. And secrets carried risk. Ray gently tilted the purse just enough to confirm what he had seen. A small, unfamiliar device. Clean. Hidden. Why would she need a second phone? The question hung in the quiet office like a shadow. His mind began connecting dots. The face-down phone, the unexplained mileage, the late-night calls. The overcompensating affection. If I stay silent, am I protecting him or betraying him? Ray stepped back, running a hand over his jaw. This was not about gossip. This was not about suspicion. This was about loyalty. John trusted him. Trusted him with his schedule, his safety, his reputation. Trusted him without hesitation. And now Ray stood at the edge of something that could shatter all of it. He could walk away. Pretend he never saw it. Let whatever was happening unfold on its own. Or he could speak. Either choice would change something. His heart felt heavy as he looked at the purse one last time. He knew the moment he said anything, there would be no undoing it. No soft landing. Truth does not arrive gently, but silence can be just as destructive. Ray picked up his phone and stared at John's name on the screen. His thumb hovered for a second. Then he made his decision. Because sometimes loyalty is not about comfort, it is about courage. And courage rarely feels easy. The hardest truths are often the ones we are most afraid to speak. The house was quiet when John walked into the office. Joyce was in the kitchen. The lights were warm. The air felt normal. Nothing about the evening suggested that his life was about to change. Ray's words echoed in his mind. Check your wife's purse. John stood still for a moment. His heart was calm, but his thoughts were not. He had trusted Joyce completely for years. Trust had always been the foundation of their marriage. He had never felt the need to question her. Why would he now? But something inside him, not anger, not fear, just a quiet uncertainty, guided him toward the black purse sitting near the desk. He took a slow breath. Then he opened it. Inside he saw a small prepaid phone. It was not her usual device. It was simple, inexpensive, and clearly separate from her everyday life. The screen lit up briefly when he touched it, revealing a notification preview. A name appeared on the screen. Derek. John felt the air leave his lungs. Next, he found a folded receipt. It was from a restaurant in Uptown Charlotte, an upscale place he recognized. The date was recent. Dinner for two. The payment method did not match anything he knew. His fingers moved slowly now, almost mechanically. And then he found the card. Small. Cream-colored. The kind that comes with flowers. He unfolded it. The handwriting was not Joyce's. The message was short, but it carried weight. I know this isn't simple, but you know what we have. Don't keep choosing the life you're supposed to have over the one that actually makes you feel alive. D. For a moment, the room felt distant. The words blurred slightly as John read them again. Alive. Life you're supposed to have. D. This cannot be real. His mind tried to reject the meaning, searching for another explanation. A misunderstanding. A harmless friendship. Anything less painful. But the card did not leave room for confusion. It spoke of a relationship, of ongoing emotion, of choice. John sat down slowly in the chair behind the desk. The purse rested in his hands, but he barely noticed it anymore. He was no longer in the room. He was inside the realization. This was not a mistake. This was intention. And the silence around him felt heavier than any argument could have been. His wedding ring felt suddenly different on his finger. Not removed, not changed, but somehow redefined. What do you do when the truth stands in front of you and you cannot look away? John did not cry. He did not shout. He simply sat there, holding a small card that rewrote the story of his marriage. The life he believed he was building had already been shared with someone else. And in that quiet office, everything he thought he knew began to fracture. Because sometimes the smallest piece of paper can carry the weight of a broken world. John did not confront Joyce that night. He did not raise his voice. He did not throw the card across the room. He did not demand explanations in anger. Instead, he chose silence. Not the silence of denial, but the silence of strategy. That evening, after dinner, he acted normal. He spoke calmly. He listened to Joyce talk about her day. He watched her smile, knowing what he now knew. And that realization hurt more than any argument could have. Later, in the dark living room, John called his older brother. The conversation lasted hours. He did not speak emotionally. He spoke carefully. He explained everything: the purse, the phone, the card. His brother told him something simple but important. Document everything before making any decisions. John understood. If this was real, he needed proof. Not assumptions. Not guesses. Evidence. If this is true, I need to face it fully. The next morning, John quietly hired a private investigator. Not through connections. Not through emotion. Through professionalism. He wanted clarity, nothing more. For the next 2 weeks, he continued his daily life exactly as before. He went to work. He managed contracts. He smiled at employees. He returned home on time. He did not let on that anything had changed. But behind the scenes, the investigation began. The report came back within 10 days. Derek Holt, 36 years old. Commercial real estate professional. Office located in South Park. Stable appearance. Successful enough to blend in. The investigator confirmed multiple meetings between Joyce and Derek. Lunches that lasted longer than necessary. Even weekend trips, including one to Asheville, which matched a high-mileage day Ray had recorded earlier. There was also the bracelet. Records showed purchases from a jeweler in South Park around the same time Joyce received a gift she described as a client appreciation token. John remembered that bracelet clearly. He had complimented it once. She had smiled and said it was thoughtful of a client. Now, in light of everything, the explanation felt different. The investigator's notes were detailed. Dates, times, locations. It was not speculation. It was pattern confirmed. John read the report alone in his office. No dramatic reaction. Just stillness. The truth was no longer a suspicion. It was documented. And yet, even with evidence in his hands, a part of him still hoped for some alternative explanation. But hope does not change facts. Does it? He closed the folder slowly. 2 weeks had passed since that night in the office. 2 weeks of quiet strength. 2 weeks of gathering truth instead of reacting to pain. The next step would not be easy, but at least now it would be informed. Because clarity may hurt, but it protects you from living in illusion. The living room was quiet that evening. John chose the formal space on purpose. Not the cozy family room where they watched movies and laughed. This room felt neutral, serious. It was where important conversations belonged. Joyce sat across from him, unaware of what was about to unfold. John's expression was calm. Not cold, not angry, just steady. He had spent 2 weeks preparing for this moment. He placed a folder on the coffee table between them. Inside were the receipts, the investigator's report, the details of the trips, the confirmation of Derek Holt, the bracelet purchase, the patterns, everything. Joyce looked at the folder, confusion slowly turning into concern. John spoke, softly. I know about the phone. I know about the trips. I know about Derek. There was no shouting, no accusations thrown in the air, just facts. Joyce's face changed instantly. The color drained. Her hands trembled. At first, she tried to deny it, a few words of resistance, a defense instinct. But the evidence was too clear, too organized, too real. Within minutes, denial collapsed. And then she cried, deeply. Not the dramatic kind of crying, but the kind that comes when truth finally removes all protection. I was lonely, she said through tears. It started that way. I felt disconnected. You were always working. It just happened. John listened without interrupting. His heart ached. Part of him still cared. Still remembered their wedding day. Still remembered their early years. This is the woman I built my life with. But he did not let emotion override clarity. When she finished speaking, the room fell silent again. John leaned forward slightly. Loneliness in a marriage is not an excuse, he said calmly. It's a conversation. It's something we talk about. It's something we work on together. His voice remained steady. You had options. You could have come to me. You could have asked for help. Instead, you chose to build a secret life for 18 months. He paused. That was not an accident. That was a decision. Every single day. Joyce lowered her head. John continued, not in anger, but in truth. I take responsibility for the parts where I failed. But accountability does not disappear because someone feels lonely. Choosing deception is still choosing deception. He looked at her, not with hatred, but with final understanding. Love requires honesty. Without it, there is nothing left to stand on. The weight in the room was undeniable. Not because of shouting, but because of clarity. And sometimes clarity is more powerful than rage. Because real love cannot survive where consistent choice and honesty are missing. After the confrontation, John did not rush to end the marriage. He made a decision that surprised many people. Instead of acting from anger, he chose structure. They agreed to 30 days of counseling and honest reflection. 30 days to decide whether the marriage could truly be rebuilt. Not out of pressure, not out of fear, but out of clarity. Joyce agreed. The first sessions were heavy, emotional, difficult. Joyce expressed remorse openly. She apologized repeatedly. She admitted the affair had lasted 18 months. She acknowledged the secrecy. She accepted responsibility in words. John listened carefully in every session. He did not interrupt. He did not raise his voice. He showed up consistently, believing that if healing was possible, it would require discipline from both sides. For a few days there was hope. Joyce seemed committed. She attended therapy. She talked about loneliness again, about feeling disconnected. She cried during sessions. She promised transparency. But something subtle remained. There were moments when her attention drifted. Moments when her phone was close to her hand again. Moments when she seemed emotionally divided, present in the room, yet somewhere else internally. John noticed. He had always noticed. Is healing possible if only one heart is fully here? Day after day, he tried to remain open. He worked on himself too. Therapy helped him understand where he had been distant. He acknowledged his long hours. He acknowledged the pressure of the business. He was willing to change. He believed in effort. But effort must flow both ways. On day 26, something shifted. John arrived home earlier than usual. The house was quiet. As he walked past the backyard sliding door, he heard Joyce's voice outside. She was on the phone. At first, he thought it might be a friend or a family member. But her tone was softer than usual, familiar in a way that made his chest tighten. He stopped. He did not mean to listen. He was simply standing near the doorway, and then he heard a name, Derek. The conversation was brief, but enough. Joyce was speaking in a tone that suggested emotional connection, not closure, not distance, not healing, connection. John did not storm outside. He did not interrupt. He simply stepped away quietly and walked upstairs. His breathing remained controlled, but something inside him settled into certainty. 30 days were meant to test willingness, and willingness cannot exist in two places at once. That evening, John made his decision clear to himself. Not from anger, from observation, because truth, once revealed, continues to reveal itself. And when someone keeps choosing secrecy even after being given a chance, the choice becomes the message. By the end of the 30 days, John no longer felt confused. He felt clear. There was no dramatic argument, no final explosion, just quiet understanding. Joyce had shown remorse, yes. She had shown emotion, but she had also shown division. And love cannot rebuild itself on partial commitment. John realized something important. Staying would not bring peace. It would only delay pain. One evening, he sat alone in the living room after Joyce had gone to bed. The house was silent. The same house that once represented success and partnership now felt heavy with memories. He thought about the early years, the laughter, the dreams, the wedding day, and for a moment his heart ached. I did everything I could. But love is not proven by endurance alone. It is proven by mutual choice. He understood that forgiveness does not always mean reunion. Sometimes forgiveness means releasing someone, and releasing yourself from the weight of constant doubt. The next morning, calmly and without anger, John told Joyce that he was filing for divorce. His voice was steady, not harsh, not emotional. He explained that he could not continue in a marriage where trust had been broken and not fully rebuilt. He said he needed a relationship where both people chose each other every single day, not only when it was convenient. Joyce cried again, but this time the decision was not uncertain. John moved forward. The divorce process began quietly. There were no public scandals, no social media statements, just legal steps handled with dignity. Soon after, John sold the Valentine house. Letting go of that home was not easy. It held years of memories. But he understood that staying in a space filled with broken promises would slow his healing. He moved to a smaller home in a quieter neighborhood in Charlotte, a place that felt simple, honest. The first night in the new house, he stood alone in the living room. No furniture yet, just open space. And for the first time in months, he felt something light. Not happiness, peace. He focused on his business, but with healthier boundaries. He began coaching youth football on weekends, something he had always wanted to do but never had time for. Being around young players reminded him of discipline, teamwork, and growth. Life was not perfect, but it was authentic. Ray remained a trusted presence in his life for a time, and their friendship strengthened through shared experience. John often reflected on how important it was to have someone willing to speak truth instead of silence. Over time, John also began a slower, more grounded relationship, built on transparency from the start. No secrets, no assumptions, just honesty. And surprisingly, he found himself grateful, not for the betrayal, but for the truth that freed him from living inside uncertainty. He once said that one painful moment of clarity was better than a lifetime of comfortable illusion. Was it easy? No. Was it worth it? Yes. Because choosing self-respect is not selfish, it is survival. And sometimes the bravest decision you can make is to walk away from what hurts you, even when you still love it.